I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us a regular guest, the former Assistant Secretary of Housing, way back when. She manages hundreds of billions of dollars for the U.S. government in property. She now produces this, the Solari Report at Solari.com. We're going to talk about this, Control 101. We'll talk about, the invisible government and also gun control. There's a lot in here. She does this every quarter. This is the third quarter wrap up. There's all kinds of stuff. I've got a little piece of paper here to mark my place. Stuff I want to talk about. But I want to bring her on, Catherine Austin Fitz of Solari.com, the publisher of the Solari Report. It's fabulous. Your site's way better than mine. But anyway,
no.
I'm so happy to have you on. It is better. I mean, look at this. This is unbelievable. This is what you give to your people who subscribe. So if you don't have anything else, four times a year, you can go, okay, this is your quarterly wrap up, which is like my weekly wrap up on steroids. I mean, it's unbelievable. Pictures, interviews. Anyway.
We know that, Greg, the news is so explosive. And what I've learned from my subscribers and clients is you have very bright, hardworking people, but they have professional responsibilities. They have families. They can't spend full time just keeping up. And so my goal is to make sure 4 times a year they have a wrap up of what's going on. And so with 10 hours a year of reading the wrap-ups, you can be one of the most knowledgeable people about what's happening in this world.
Yeah, what's really happening in this world, too. And it's I don't mean to say I don't get paid. You don't pay me anything. I enjoy having you on. I read your wrap-ups. It's like every time I read this, it's just so well done. I mean, she must be at the printer, art design. She's got people, guest writing for you, all this facts to check. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Anyway.
Why should fake news have a monopoly on beautiful graphics? We should have a monopoly on beautiful graphics. We can do it too.
Except you're not fake. Yeah, you can. What you read in here is that you can go to the bank on, which is why you're an investment advisor.
A lot of people who want the real deal want it in a professional.
That's right.
They want a really professional presentation, and that's why I think your show is so successful. I think that's why the Solari Report is really successful.
I think it is successful. I want to get into, before we start, I want to get into this about, I got 2 pathways I told you in the pre-interview. Ruled by invisible government and also gun control. Also a little something about Aaron Russo. Everybody should watch his video before he died. But I'll get to that. But I want to set up this Mueller investigation. This is outrageous. I mean, it's been talked about in Congress with Jim Jordan, who says, hey, you know what I think? That your guy, Strzok, wasn't fired because of a negative tweet, because everybody on your whole thing is an anti-Trumper and pro-Hillary and covered for Hillary Clinton. And so if you fired everybody who was anti-Trump, you wouldn't have anybody left on the...
It's really funny. Every time you see a picture of Mueller, he looks more and more ashamed.
He should be.
And he should be.
He should be ashamed. And now, this is talked about in Congress now. Jim Jordan, Representative Jordan, says, hey, you know what I think happened? Strzok, who you fired for this tweet, for being negative to Trump, what really happened is that he took this fake dossier paid for by the DNC and Hillary Clinton because she ran the DNC. You took this fake Russian dossier, P dossier, whatever you want to call it, and you dressed it up, and you had Strzok, the FBI, not you, Mr. Christopher Wray, because you're new, but Strzok dressed it up as a piece of intelligence or counterintelligence and took it to the FISA court and got a warrant and started this whole pig pen of a fake news witch hunt investigation on Donald Trump and his family and everything else. And Ray couldn't say a word. I can't talk about that in this setting.
So you've had the fake Russian dossier come out, but you've had 2 other things, Greg, that have been devastating to the whole Russian canard. One is Bill Binney and his team have come out and said it was a local download. And they're at the top of the top. So
I didn't hear it, but of course the mainstream media
wouldn't talk about it. They didn't do a local download. And then you have Donna Brazile coming out and saying she was afraid for her life. So.
Yeah. Can you imagine somebody? I mean, this is not some crazy, internet rumor. She's in her book saying, I was afraid somebody was going to shoot, a sniper was going to shoot through my windows, and I had to draw my blinds. This is Donna Brazile, head of the DNC. Right.
Well, Seth Rich was shot in the back, right in the middle of the election. There were a lot of other people dropping like flies. We saw a lot of what I believe was assassinations. The Clinton hit list was getting longer and longer. It was pretty long before the election started. So
we talked about this in the pre-interview, and so just fine and dandy for you to disagree. It looks like this is that Mueller's job it was, I don't know what it is now because he looks totally ridiculous. I can't believe he's even saying he's a former law person, a top law enforcement official. But it looks like this is some sort of a soft coup that they're trying to take Trump out. There's a lot of people that are going to go to jail.
So I think it was started as a way of getting leverage over Trump and the administration. The Wall Street Journal says Mueller is now up to $3.2 million. I think the problem is, my guess is the factions who put Trump in have already made a deal with, with the other factions in the deep state. And so Mueller now is sort of without a scope in one sense. So he's sort of twisting in the wind. What he's done is he ran an entrapment, or an entrapment was run by the FBI on Flynn, which is a nothing burger. And then you have an enforcement against Manafort for things he did before he had anything to do with a campaign or Trump. It's basically, I tell my clients all day long, please file your FBAR forms. So they've nailed Manafort on not filing his FBAR forms. Finally, I finally now have some reason to show my clients you've got to file your FBAR forms. So it looks like what he's doing is going to the ends of the earth to squeeze two people around Trump, hopefully to try and fake up some case on the Russian thing. In the meantime, the whole Russia story has been proved to be a nothing burger, as one of the CNN reporters has said. And so now he's sort of hanging out there, twisting in the wind, spending a lot of money outside his scope of work, because the Flynn and the Manafort prosecutions have nothing to do with his scope of work. And it's, if you look at what they did to sort of nail Flynn, it was an entrapment, and it was if it was not a criminal entrapment under the law, it was certainly criminal in ethical terms. It's so disgusting, and you've seen an outpouring of former administration officials just criticizing it in just excoriating this, because it is one of, I have personally seen the Department of Justice do a lot of lawless and criminal things. I call them the Sheriff of Nottingham.
Yeah.
But this is the worst of the worst, and to a very honorable public servant. You can agree with Mike Flynn or not, but whatever he is, he's an honorable public servant, and this is just, this is a star chamber. This is the Spanish Inquisition.
This is what's going to make this stop? I mean, do you think they're going to be able to impeach Donald Trump? They had a vote in Congress, I don't know, last week saying that, we're gonna impeach Donald Trump. Was it this week? I can't remember. I don't know, 60 some odd ridiculous, repugnant Democrats voted to impeach him for nothing because they don't like him, because they're losing power. What do you suppose? Do you think they're going to be able to impeach Donald Trump?
The United States is being run as a criminal enterprise. So you did a wonderful interview with Dr. Mark Skidmore on the missing money earlier, about a week ago, Greg, and what he was able to describe is there's 21 trillion just missing from two agencies. That's not all the agencies. If a group of people can get as much money as they want, essentially for free, through the federal credit mechanism and the federal government mechanism, and spend it illegally outside the rule of law with no accountability and no transparency, then they are free to do whatever they want, including kill with impunity. And as long as those cash flows make them rich and give them power, they're going to do whatever they want, because there's no check on them. There's no internal financial control. And that's why I keep coming back to the fact you've got to shut off the money. And to me, you can't do that. Washington, if you look at what has happened to Trump since he's gone in, I don't think that's going to happen in Washington. So either our state and local officials, in combination with the citizens, switch the cash flows. I mean, we as citizens have to say, this money has got to be subject to the rule of law. And so either we switch cash flows, or they're going to keep, acting with impunity.
But back to my original question, do you think they're going to impeach Donald Trump? Are they going to get him out of office?
I think the chances of impeaching Donald Trump are extremely low before 2018. You'll have to see what comes out of the elections. Now, here's the danger. Now that Trump has given them what they want, basically now that they've achieved what they want on the corporate tax rate, I think they'll achieve it by December 22nd. The danger is once you get what you want, you then proceed to do, there are less checks and controls on you politically. And so I think we're going to see a whole range of policies after the tax bill passes that are not going to necessarily be popular with America. But I don't think they're going to waste any bullets on trying to impeach Trump, certainly before the election. Now, I think that reflects a deal that got made this summer, probably at the Bohemian Grove. So I just think, the people who wanted Trump, who chose Trump as their candidate and now are in control of the machinery, don't want to give up control of the machinery, and an impeachment is going to waste their time. So I don't think it's going to happen.
No, what about all these people that are dropping like flies? I mean, I think I feel like that even Mueller, and I heard former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich talk about how Mueller is deep in crime. Mueller, Comey,
Right.
Loretta Lynch, Holder, Bush, Bush, Bill Clinton with his speeches, Barack Obama with all the just trying to destroy Donald Trump on the way in, and everything else. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, two former FBI directors, Mueller and Comey, two Secretary of States, Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, as he gave pallets of money to the Iranians, which he shouldn't have done, for a no-deal deal that was never signed. But anyway, I digress. A lot of people look like they're going to be going to jail if Trump gets his way and continues to build power. What say you?
Well, here's the thing. We went through a process that you and I have talked about many times, starting in 1996, where we had a financial coup d'etat. And having that financial coup d'etat required engineering a tremendous amount of financial fraud, not to mention the ongoing narcotics trafficking and all sorts of illegal activities. And in fact, what my red button story is about, Greg, is the fact that the U.S. economy is deeply dependent on criminal cash flows. And we're the global leader in money laundering. And if we stopped doing that, the economy would be, in for a major, major change. So, yes, we're deeply dependent on illegal activities, and our cash flows are deeply dependent on illegal activities. But, until recently, the preference of most Americans is to keep that system going as long as it works for them. So if it's cash flow plus to them, they want the cash flows to go. So if you're a public official, you're between a rock and a hard place. If you push the red button and stop the illegal cash flows, then all hell breaks loose. At the same time, you have to engage in what I would call criminal enterprise. The U.S. government has been run as a criminal enterprise, and I've documented and proved that on multiple occasions. And so, this is all of us, because the swamp that exists in Washington exists from sea to shining sea. It's not just in Washington, it's in every county, every state house in the country. And if we're going to change and cleanse ourselves of enormous financial dependency on criminal activities, we're talking about a very big change. And it's not just in Washington, and certainly not something that the executive branch or the Congress can do alone.
That'd be a good place to start, being we're talking about, they keep calling it the swamp, and it's really traitors and fraudsters. And if you look at the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they were now no oversight, and they were shaking down banks, which I'm not a fan of banks, but I don't think you ought to, one robbery doesn't justify another one. But they were shaking down banks and giving it to their Democratic subgroups, to whoever, Black Lives Matter, except in Chicago, and also all these other Democratic spiders that are going out. They're funding their stuff because the DNC is broke, as Hillary Clinton took it over. But I mean, this is an unbelievable amount of fraud and crime going on. I mean, have Donald Trump building his own intelligence agency because he can't trust the CIA.
Well, but here's the problem. That is, that is a solution that is more dangerous than the problem itself. Bringing in, because I've seen this happen before, bringing in private mercenaries and building up private mercenary armies and giving them wide latitude to implement, giving them essentially government powers without accountability.
Well, that's happening. That appears to be happening.
Something? That is if you think the lawlessness is bad now, wait do you see what happens with that. You're talking about, totalitarianism on an out-of-control basis.
Are these people, or do you think Hillary Clinton will go to jail? Do you think Clinton and Bill Clinton will go to jail, and all these people in Hollywood? I mean, they're dropping like flies.
I would give it about a 30. I would give it about a 30 to 40% chance at this point that Hillary Clinton is prosecuted. I think it's unlikely that Bill will be prosecuted, just because he was the president of the United States. But I think right now, coming into the 2018 and then the 2020 election, Craig, there are so many people who are absolutely furious about the lawlessness, and of course, the criminals. I mean, the Clintons were just out of control, and so I think that the Democrats are looking for people they can throw to the wolves. It's a little bit like throwing Christians to the lions to satisfy the crowd. And they've clearly thrown the Clintons under the bus if you just look at what's come out over the last 2 months and what happened with Donna Brazil's book. But it's a long way between here and a prosecution. And but I think the pressure coming into the 2018, 2020 elections, they're going to have to start throwing, some dirty politicians to the lions. And the question is, tag you're it. Who's it going to be? Hillary Clinton is a prime suspect. The question is, the Republicans are going to make an assessment of whether that is going to help or hurt them in the 2018 elections.
Yeah, do you think that they're just getting rid of people from Hollywood to the media to the government? I mean, you were in the pre-interview, you said, listen, we had a financial coup d'etat. They don't need these people anymore, and they're getting rid of them. Could you explain that?
These people are expensive. These people are expensive. This is a fundamental re-engineering. When you have a wave of automation, you'll see big organizations just basically knock out and re-engineer out a whole layer of people they don't need. So, we are watching purges, but those purges are basically knocking out the expensive people you no longer need from the financial coup period and bringing in a whole new wave of people, or you're just automating, you're downsizing. So, we see sex purges in Hollywood and in various forms of media and entertainment. We're watching, I call them shakedown purges in Saudi Arabia. Give me 70% of the money you got during the financial coup. Are you going to stay in the Ritz-Carlton prison forever and possibly be tortured? So, so you have various purges going on because the reality is the world needs to move on. This money needs to be reinvested, and you can't afford a bunch of sort of egotistical maniacs who are good at stealing money. You can't use them to build the future, and you can't afford them. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, if your coffers are empty, you need to rebuild the economy because the oil revenues have stopped, and you've got all these billionaires who are very difficult to deal with. Then you're going to get a shakedown purge. That's what's happening. So I think this is a fundamental shift from what I call Global 2.0 to Global 3.0, and it's going to be it's going to be marketed as different things, but essentially you're shifting from one phase to another, and a lot of it is the fact that you have bubbled and created a huge amount of money that's floating around in the fixed income and derivative markets, and now you've got to bring it down into the hard economy, into hard assets, and the real economy. And the question is, how do you do that? You need to switch the caliber of person responsible for management and reinvestment of the money. But the other thing you have to do is hold on a minute. Well, wait. You got to do it in a way that doesn't kick off hyperinflation, because we're talking about trillions of dollars moving back into the real economy and doing it without kicking off hyperinflation. And you've got to go fast, so you can't negotiate with 100 big ego political donors or billionaires. You've just got to take the money and go fast.
Basically, we had criminals steal this money. And now we're getting rid of the criminals. I think you said this in the pre-interview. I don't know if I'm getting this right. You had criminals steal this money, the Bill and Hillary Clintons of the world and everybody else, and now you don't need them anymore. Now you need a different. So so in other words, the deep state is going to purge their own criminals.
Yeah, they're expendable. You throw them over you basically throw them overboard. You don't need them anymore.
Now, what about the little guy, the 2.0, and the little guy, the pensioners, people with pensions?
Well, here's the challenge. So
I mean, the little guy's going to get creamed, are they not?
The little guy's been getting creamed for the last 20 years, Greg. Where you been?
No, but they're going to get creamed even more. They're going to get creamed where it's in your face creamed, not slowly a few percent a year creamed.
It depends. It's very hard to generalize, but essentially here's what happened. You've shifted all the assets out of 2.0 and put it in 3.0. And now you've still got the liabilities. And the question is, you've got liabilities for pensions. You've got liabilities for retirement systems like Social Security. You've got military pensions. And the question is now, how are you going to either fund or abrogate those liabilities? How are those liabilities going to be managed now that all the assets are over in 3.0? And the reason I keep screaming about let's get the 21 trillion back is 21 trillion of undocumentable adjustments is more than the entire outstanding debt of the United States government. The money's there, and in fact, under the law, the U.S. citizens can assert ownership of the related assets or the related assets of the people who implemented the illegal transactions. And I keep trying to put that money back on the table because then it's a very different conversation when they start to try and abrogate, obligations. So I said once the tax reform is locked in, the danger is then they're going to start to cut and attack and abrogate the liabilities. And so I expect after the tax reform is a lock next year, we're going to start to see, and we've already had the administration see, they're going to move on welfare, they're going to move on a whole bunch of other things. And my fear is welfare and food stamps are really code words for everything else. So that is the big question. How are we going to handle the liabilities now that the assets have been shifted?
And back to the Mueller investigation, he's going to go, you think, and I just want to wrap this up. So you're saying that they've already moved on. Mueller, he didn't get the memo that, okay, you missed. You didn't knock him out early. We needed you to knock him out early. You didn't do it. And now he's just hanging in the wind. So he's just embarrassed.
But Mueller may be able to create some leverage that they can use. So my concern is that Mueller's, basically by squeezing Flynn and Manafort and trying to get something out of Manafort and Flynn that he can use. I mean, if you want to get Donald Trump, you can in this sense. Donald Trump was a developer in New York during the 90s. The U.S. Treasury and the U.S. intelligence agencies engineered, they stole and laundered a tremendous amount out of Russia, working in partnership with the Russian mafia. And a lot of that money came into New York and went into real estate, among many other things. I mean, it was a tremendous amount of money, but this was an official U.S. operation. Now, Donald Trump did business with that money just like everybody else in New York, and if you want to plow through his Russian relationships before he even ran for president, you can make his life miserable and you can create leverage and you can create a lot of headlines. So if you want to do that, you can. It has nothing to do with the campaign, and it has nothing to do with Make America Great Again. I litigated with the Department of Justice for many, many years, and they tried to falsify and frame me, or the U.S. government tried to falsify evidence and frame me on multiple occasions. So I've lived through their lawlessness when it comes to litigation process, and you can basically steal 11 years of somebody's life. They did. I experienced it. So don't underestimate Mueller's ability to waste the president's time, waste our money, and cause a lot of negative headlines for Trump.
Which brings me to Jeff Sessions. What are you doing? I mean, if you were the president, would you fire Jeff Sessions?
If Jeff Sessions should be fired. Jeff Sessions to allow this to happen is a complete abrogation of his commitment to the American people to bring the rule of law to the Department of Justice. This is a complete waste of our money and time. $3.2 million for the Mueller investigation. Do you know how many children are homeless right now in America? And that money could get them a home. I mean, you can go into the FHA foreclosure inventory and for $50,000 get a perfectly modest, decent home and fix it up, and take those kids off the street. Why are we spending $3.2 million on Mueller, when children are going hungry?
I mean, now that we've pretty much confirmed that this FBI investigation used a completely bogus, paid for by Hillary Clinton document, Russian, paid for completely for its opposition research that the FBI used as a phony intelligence document to go to the FISA court. Why doesn't Jeff Sessions just say, you know what, I'm unrecusing myself, this is a sham, and call an end to it? Rosenstein, you're out. Sessions, you're out. I mean, Mueller, you're done. Get out.
I don't know. I think You saw my 4 profiles. I did a profile on the Trump administration in the first quarter called The Clash of Civilizations, and you saw my 4 profiles.
Yep.
Titanic, Turners, Scaredy Cats, Scorpions, and Pigs. And I think Jeff Sessions turned out to be a scaredy cat, and it's a bad idea to have a scaredy cat run the Department of Justice. Now, Jeff Sessions got scared because they were going to go after him. And if you look at what they were going to do to him if he didn't recuse himself, I understand why he was scared, because I've been a target of that kind of, Cynthia McKinney calls it the Ziocons. I've been a target of the neocons. I know how scary it is. But if you want to be the attorney general, you have to say no to lawlessness in any form. So he got scared. He was a scaredy cat. And
what did they have against him? What did they have against him? And if you're that exposed, why even go through the motions of trying to be the attorney general?
I don't think they had anything on him. I think he said he didn't do anything with the Russians during the campaign. And as a senator, he'd had a brief meeting with the Russians in the course of business. And, when he said he had nothing to do with the Russians, he was thinking about the campaign. He wasn't thinking about his normal duties as a senator. And they were going to nail him on dancing on the head of the pin. It's yah-yah, Greg. It's yah-yah. But look, let me just say this. If you want to have a sovereign government, then a government official needs to be able to say no. And I said no. I was ordered repeatedly during the Bush administration to do illegal activities. I refused to do it. I was forced out. I started a company. The company was wildly successful. I tried to stop all sorts of financial fraud, and I was again ordered to do illegal things. I refused to do it. And then I spent 11 years and $6 million, dealing with physical harassment. I was poisoned on multiple occasions, on and on and on. Not everybody, I always tell people, have you seen Will Smith in Enemy of the State? I played Will Smith in real life. Not everybody has $6 million in 11 years to play Enemy of the State. Flynn doesn't have that time. He's not going to fight the way I did because he's got a wife, he's got a family, he's got a son, and he's going to take the fall to protect them. He cannot afford to spend $6 million. He's selling his house. So he caved. They gave me an offer to cave like that in 98. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going to fight. But I could only do that because I wasn't responsible for a family, and I could afford to go down to peanut butter and jelly and risk my life. Mike Flynn can't afford to do that to his family.
And that brings us to Control 101. And what did my note here said? And there's lots more than just that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff about we are ruled by an invisible government. Tell me about how we're ruled by an invisible government, and why can't we shine light on these weasels?
So I did a really serious due diligence on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies this year, and it produced a wonderful Solari report, which I really recommend to you, Greg, called the Bitcoin the Op. People are arguing, is it a bubble or not? My attitude is, look, it's an op, and it's a big one. And one of the things that really frustrated me.
Explain that to people. It's an op. It's an operation. It's a government. It's a psyop. It's an operation by the government.
Right. So remember, we're talking. If you look at the deep state, we're talking about a group of people who can basically manipulate the bond market, the stock market, the derivative markets, the currency markets, which are huge trillion-dollar markets.
And they are doing it.
And the cryptocurrency market is tiny, and ownership is very consolidated. It's very concentrated. So if there's any market in the world that's easy to manipulate, it's cryptocurrencies compared to what they're manipulating in size every day in fixed income. This is nothing. Here's the reality. If I'm Mr. Global, I want a digital currency, and I want to be able to do it economically on scale in a very big way. Now, that means a lot of technology has to get worked out, and the train tracks and payment systems have to get worked out. It's very complicated. It's very hard. It is much cheaper to run the price of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin up and get every software developer in the world figuring out how to do that, as opposed to hiring them all and paying them to do it. You're going to get there much faster.
In other words, they're throwing the greed coin out there and saying, look at this shiny object at 19,000 or 20,000. Look, it's going higher and higher and higher. Go ahead.
It's not just the greed coin, it's the entrainment. So you're combining greed with massive entrainment, which you can deliver on digital systems. You can deliver it on the internet. You can deliver it on the TV. And so you've got people in a state, there is nothing worse than making a fortune for the first time in your life when you're digesting immense amounts of entrainment. I've seen it. I've lived through 2 housing bubbles, the internet bubble. I've lived through a whole bunch of bubbles, and there's nothing worse. People, when they make a lot of money, particularly for the first time, it's funny. I had a partner at Dillon Reed, a wonderful partner, and he did an assessment at the end of 1989. And he figured out if we had had chimpanzees in the trader chairs, we would have made more money by just running those average balances for the decade. But of course, all the traders thought they were geniuses. Michael Lewis did a great book, Liar's Poker, that sort of documents the experience. But anyway, so you're running an op, and the reality is if you look at what they want to invent, right now blockchain is not yet secure, primarily because the transactions going in and out are not secure. The encryption, in my opinion, is not secure. Blockchain cannot be done on scale economically yet. I think we can certainly get there, and there are all sorts of issues about what happens when you combine these things with quantum computing. So if you look at what has to be worked out, it's formidable, and the way you're going to get work it out is to run this price up and keep it up and going. That's number one. And the beauty of this, Greg, and this is the beauty of it, I call it GLD 2.0. The gold price was soaring, and then they figured out a way to get everybody to buy paper gold by buying the ETFs. Now they're getting everybody to stay out of gold by pulling them into cryptocurrencies. And so you're keeping, remember I said there's a real problem of hyperinflation with how much cash they've printed. There's a real problem that land and gold and hard assets go to the moon. Well, you're sucking huge amounts of money off into cryptocurrencies. It's very much what they did at one point with the dollar. Now they're doing it with cryptocurrencies. So for the central banks, this is fantastic because it's really helping them keep the price of gold down while the central banks globally are buying and fighting over their inventory.
And how much higher do you think this will go? So this is really, well, let me stop. Let me back up. So really the Bitcoin deal is a PSYOP, is a government operation. And it really is siphoning off money that would be massively showing massive inflation in gold and silver and in land and housing and all the kinds of other stuff. So it's siphoning off money that would make it very hard for them to keep interest rates low and be able to say, look, there's no inflation.
Right, but it's also helping them invent the thing they want to go to, the ultimate fiat currency, as and that's why I love that interview with Aaron Rousseau. He says, what do the bankers want? They want to chip everybody. And they want to be able to turn your money on and off, unless you behave. So Aaron really described where they want to go with this. But if you look at the technical issues and the sort of nuts and bolts issues of creating those mechanisms, it's a lot that has to be invented and has to be sort of figured out and risk managed. So you're talking about a giant invention that's global and very, very, from a mechanical standpoint, very, very complicated. And running up the price will get the best and the brightest figuring it out at unbelievable speeds all over the world. Because now we're talking about something truly global. Anybody who has a smartphone can, is and can participate. So getting this to something that's risk managed and secure is going to take a lot of invention. And the cheapest way to do that is to run the price up. I mean, it's pretty clever.
And you think the price is going to go way higher than 19,000 or 20,000 or whatever it's been touching?
So number one, I think it's a speculation. So this is a speculative investment, and you've got to be really careful because, as we've seen, this system is not secure, and the hackability, every week it's 50 million lost, 60 million lost. So a lot of money. This is something where you can lose 100%, and you can do it quickly. Not just by being hacked, but by all sorts of transactions. And I would really encourage, because it's complicated, you listen to Bitcoin the Op, but you got to trade it like a pump and dump. You're trading a pump and dump, and you don't know when they're going to start to dump. The market's clearly very, very thin. And so you've got to just be smart and understand, one, you can't put any more money in it than you're prepared to lose 100% of. And two, you got to get your principal out. You got to ride it up like a pump and get your principal out and play with your winnings. And then just be very savvy, because there's no way to tell when the dump will come. If you look at what needs to be invented, Greg, I think they can take the price much higher. Why wouldn't they?
In other words, double, triple.
It's cheaper than hiring all these people.
You could take the price to 40,000, 50,000, 100,000, and you got to report. Listen, just so people understand this, there's an idea out there that's totally anonymous, and you don't have to report the money that you make. And I say, don't cheat the IRS, please.
Okay, so please go to Solari. I had a wonderful law firm that I work with write a special Solari report on taxation of cryptocurrencies. Not only do you need to pay taxes, number one, but number two, you have to file currency transaction reports. And I think the whole Bitcoin universe is, you've got a tremendous number of people who do not understand their compliance obligations. And when this is all said and done, the IRS is going to have a file on every one of them. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Coinbase case where the IRS won, and Coinbase is now going to have to turn over a huge database to them of users, I think up through 2014. But from everything I've seen, because I really tried to due diligence what was happening with the security of the transactions in and out of the blockchain and the encryption, I think in Utah, the NSA has a complete database of everybody who's got any Bitcoin and probably knows exactly how much they have. So if you think you're going to avoid IRS compliance, think again. It's very dangerous.
If somebody gives you Bitcoin, you don't incur any problem until you try to sell it and not report it. Is that right?
Well, it depends on how much they give you. Let's assume they give you less than $20,000.
Yeah.
Then, and so you don't have a currency transaction report problem. Then it's only when you realize gains, unless. Now if it's a gift, and then you have to deal with a gifting law. So I'm assuming the gift is less than $14,000 for purposes of taxable gift.
But if you buy it, and let's say you buy Bitcoin for $1, and it goes to some crazy amount like $19,000, until you sell it,
you're not taxable.
You're not taxable until you actually sell it. So at the point you get it,
but if it goes to $19,000, and if you have your private key on an exchange,
yeah.
You're playing with fire. Get that Bitcoin on a hard wallet. On a hard wallet. You do not want that sitting on an exchange, with the exchange having your private key. It can be gone tomorrow.
Now, you think it could go double, triple, quadruple Bitcoin from here? You could go much higher.
This is entirely a political question. When do they have everything they need? When do the central banks have what they need to launch a digital currency? What else needs to be figured out? Looks to me like they need everybody inventing for at least another year or two. But
wow.
It could shut down. It could shut down tomorrow. They could have it tomorrow, and it could take 2 years. I don't know. Remember, have you ever heard what happened to me last summer? I was up in Germany, and then I went down to Basel to do a wonderful interview with Thomas Meyer. And Thomas drove me to the station, so we drive right by the Bank of International Settlements. I was headed over to Zurich for a meeting, and we walk into the Swiss Federal Railway station, and I get out my card to buy my ticket to Zurich, and the machine informs me that I can buy my ticket with Bitcoin, and I can even buy more Bitcoin. I can top up my wallet from the Swiss Federal Railway system. So I said, whatever this is, it's not something that the central banks don't like, because I just drove right by the Bank of International Settlements. And if they didn't want the Swiss Federal Railway system to be selling Bitcoin, I assure you wouldn't be happening.
And what about gold and silver and land and real stuff? People think that gold is now passé and you don't have to have it, and silver, it's been hammered by the powers that be, by the naked short sellers, the CTFC. I guess they're watching porn like the people at the SEC. They don't do anything about it. What happens to gold and silver? Should you still be a buyer of gold and silver?
Well, I'm sitting here with this Solari coin. So me, I'm a gold girl. Greg, gold is is what it's always been, which is a real store of value. And in fact, if you look at the smart money, if you look at the central banks around the world, what did we just hear? The BRICS just announced they're putting together a gold trading system. China, Russia, the central bank in Russia has been buying steadily since 2007. So the smart money is buying gold and the smart money is buying land. If you read the land report, which is the top 100 holders of land in the United States, their holdings of land has doubled since 2008. So what I see is tremendous money moving into hard assets. Now, I think one of the reasons we see silver take a dive, silver had been up this year and just took a dive, and so it's down for the year. Gold's still holding it, I think, about up 8%. But one of the reasons is if you look at what's happening with tax reform, you have a huge repatriation of cash in, and if you look at some of the movements on that, it could balloon the dollar, and we could see, precious metals get whacked for some period of time. It depends on the performance of the dollar. However, I have to tell you, all over the world, what I see is smart money buying gold and land. And in fact, my concern is the BRICS. Russia has announced they're doing a ruble cryptocurrency, the Bank of Russia. And so what I think they're going to do is they're going to figure out how to do the cryptocurrencies, and they're going to combine it with a gold trading network, and you're going to have digital currencies combined with gold, and there you are.
And price much higher.
Yeah, they're gonna back it with real assets. They're not going to back it with air, and a real asset. The U.S. military is a real asset. So the U.S. dollar is backed by the force of the U.S. military, which to date has been very compelling.
And final thing, and we didn't get a lot in your book, but you got to go to the Solari Report to get all this. I'm just scratching the surface. I just picked out a couple of things for to talk about in this, and this is just for the third quarter, and the site is much deeper and richer, and this is lovely. But it is about, you have this picture of heads, a bunch of heads, and it's about
skulls.
Yeah, skulls. I'm sorry, skulls, and it's about this is about gun control and what happens every time they take control of your guns and you turn them in and whatever. I'll just read the last one. There's several. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 examples. The last one, 1970, Uganda embraced gun control. Over the next 9 years, 300,000 Christians were rounded up and killed. And So gun control is not a good thing for the masses. And that's what the Democrats, they become the party of the New World Order, gun control, New World Order, immigrants, illegal immigrants, refugees, all men that are Muslim, like you can't check their backgrounds. Unbelievable. Oh, gun control, a control for the masses. Tell me about your thoughts on it.
So I'm concerned about both financial crimes and physical crimes. One of the reasons I published Control 101, and I really think, Greg, this is as good a wrap-up as we've ever done, and I can't recommend it to people highly enough, because many of the misunderstandings in the financial community is they don't understand how control works. And you have to understand control to understand how anything in the financial markets works. But I've been very frustrated for two reasons. One is, as I said, now that we've shifted all the assets out of the 2.0 systems, the liabilities remain military pensions, pension funds, Social Security, health care. And, it is very difficult to abrogate those liabilities or those, to the citizens, their assets. It's very hard to tear up and abrogate those obligations if the citizens are well armed. And I assure you, if you strip citizens of guns, it's going to be much easier to tear up their military pensions and their Social Security. So that's number one. There's a direct linkage between honoring the laws and the contracts and whether or not the population can defend themselves against physical harm. The second thing is, I think after tax reform is finalized, there's going to be a move on the social safety net, welfare, food stamps, et cetera. And the reality is, in America, it takes quite a long time for the sheriff to get to your house. And you and I are responsible for our safety from the time the problem starts to the 45 minutes when the sheriff can get there. There's nothing wrong with the sheriff, but in my county, it's going to take 45 minutes before the sheriff is going to get there on average. And I'm responsible for my safety for that 45 minutes. And if you look at how much crime has gone on in this country, we're talking about essentially the government promoting and allowing massive narcotics trafficking with Fast and Furious. We're talking about the Department of Justice giving massive numbers of guns to criminals all over the country. So, how are you going to be safe as the squeeze financially continues and the social safety net gets pulled? There's a real problem managing physical safety. If you had gun control in Tennessee, I would get up and leave immediately. I wouldn't be safe here.
And Paul Ryan has been out to talking about how we're going to really tackle all these social welfare programs in 2018. That's exactly what you're talking about. He announced that. That's exactly what he's going to do.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. The way the Republicans and Democrats have traditionally dealt with hiding the fact that they're stealing all of our money and the money's being run illegally, the way they hide it is to play divide and conquer games. And they are going to have a field day with playing divide and conquer games, black versus white, old versus young. And I think both the 2018 and 2020 elections, what we in the independent media have to do is turn the conversation out of divide and conquer into something positive. But in the meantime, if it doesn't necessarily work in my neighborhood, I need to be well armed.
And finally, you said that if we didn't get a crash in 2017, and actually the day that Donald Trump got elected, we had a flash crash. I mean, we had limit down the next day in the markets, and of course they pumped that up. And Gregory Manarino says, at TraderSource.net, he says there's massive bond buying going on. It's just unbelievable. I've never seen it before. They'll start out with the big plunges in the market, and they come in and buy it. In the afternoon, you get a big plunge in the bond market. They're buying. He says, I've never seen it bond buying like this.
Well, here's the thing that we are so. I get tired of saying it, Greg, because I say it every time I'm on the show. We are so overdue. If you just look at cycles historically, we are way overdue for a 15 to 25% correction. I think we're in a long-term bull market for equities. I think it's going to continue. But we are way overdue for a major correction. Now, will we get it in the first quarter? I don't know. The tax reform bill is certainly going to hold up the U.S. market. I sent you a graph. I don't know if you had time to look at it, but if you look, our big problem globally is that we have continually engineered corporate stocks and securities to grow at much faster rates than the GNP. So we have a win-lose relationship between the GNP and corporations. So we keep using sort of steroids to engineer more and more of the economy into big corporations and keep their stocks pumped. And the reality is what we need to do is we need to get back to really sensible growth in the GNP. That's only going to come if you have the rule of law. Criminality is what's destroying productivity in the overall economy.
And do you think we'll have a crash in 2018? You said if we don't get it in 2017, we sure as heck.
I don't think we'll have a crash in 2018, but I think we could get meaningful correction. I mean, I think it would be very healthy for the stock market if we could get a meaningful correction. And that might be, I'd be surprised to see 25%, but a meaningful correction is 15 to 25%. And for people who stayed out of the equity markets, if it comes, it will be an opportunity to get back in. One of the things I've done with my clients is I now have most of my clients in hedged products. So if the market goes down, they're protected. It means they give up on the upside, but they're protected on the downside. So I think there are strategies where you can stay in the market and work through a correction just with hedging strategies. So if you're worried about a correction, and I'm very worried about one in the first quarter, get hedged.
But could it just get out of control? I mean, you're not talking about a normal time when you were investing money. I mean, we're in a position where everything is controlled. There are no markets.
I think it's unlikely that it will get.
Stop. Hold on a minute. Stop. Let's get back. I want to get back to reality here. There are no markets. You're talking about investing money. There are no markets. There is no bond market. There's no price discovery. That's right. So you're not investing. What you're telling people to do is to play the intervention.
No, you are investing.
No, you're not investing. There's no markets. If there are no markets, you're trying to tell me that there are no markets.
There are good companies.
But there are no markets. So you don't know. You can't believe there's no market for gold. There's no market for silver. There's no market at LIBOR. There's no market at Treasuries. There's no market for the futures. Right. There's no market. We're not investing.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not. You're investing in a game.
Yes, I am.
You're gambling.
I don't need your prices to know that my Cougaran has value.
I understand that, but the markets are phony.
I'm investing in something real. Okay.
I,
The problem is I've got to know what it's worth. I can't depend on my Bloomberg to tell me what it's worth. That's the problem, because I'm having my pricing mechanism interfered with.
correct.
Now,
So you're not really investing, you're gambling. You are gambling. I mean, listen, you can't sit there and tell
you're trading in the dark.
It's right. You cannot tell your clients that you are investing.
You're trading in the dark.
That's right, because there are no markets.
Now,
so this is not investing. This is gambling.
Into things which are fraudulent.
Yes.
And that's not investing.
I don't think any of it's investing.
They're being scammed.
Until you have honest markets, I don't see how anybody can call what they're doing investing. You're gambling. You're at the casino. Not when you can intervene at LIBOR, intervene at the futures market, intervene buying stocks. Not when you have the exchange stabilization fund. Not when you can intervene in the gold market, the commodities market, the CME. There is no investing. There are no price discovery.
I see people continue to invest well.
They are gambling
and do well at it without markets and decent price.
They're gambling well.
You and I. They're not gambling.
Yes, they are gambling. Then you're counting on them. What happens if they let interest rates, if they quit buying the bond?
If I buy a farm and grow great organic food and sell it to people and it's useful for them, despite all the corruption in the markets and prices, I'm investing in something real, and it's
I'll give you that, but you're not investing in the S&P 500. You're not investing in the overall equity market. There's no equity market. There's a casino that we think is an equity market.
I disagree. There is a casino and there is a criminal enterprise, but there are also great companies doing great things that you don't hear about. I mean, one of the beauties of what I do, because I do screens, and what I'm looking for are the truly productive companies. And Greg, it's one of the unsung stories of what's going on in this world now, because there are a lot of fine, competent, ethical people taking new technology, taking new scientific discoveries, and doing wonderful and exciting and fabulous things. And we don't get to see and hear it because there's so much of the corruption and fraud going on. But it's happening, and it's happening quietly.
You know what? But I'm not trying to argue with you, because I think you're great. I think
you are. We are.
I know, but I think you're fantastic. But for the common person, that they think they're investing by going down to Edward Jones or Fidelity or whatever and start buying all these stocks, and they think they're investing, and they're looking at their 10K and whatever, they're not you. I mean, they're not investing. You are involved in a casino.
Amount of knowledge and experience.
You do. You're smart as hell. I wouldn't be investing money.
Without an incredible amount of knowledge and experience, it is very, very dangerous, to play in a world where prices lie.
Ding, ding, ding. Thank you very much.
And that's why I wrote Control 101, because, what I was saying is that whether it's the mind control technology or the manipulation of the financial system, so many of these systems were designed for us to do a variety of different functions, have turned into control systems and are lying to us. And the more dangerous than even the financial system, Greg, is the fake news. And that's one of the reasons I appreciate your walking out of the fake news and then doing USA Watchdog, because these are exactly the conversations that people need to hear. The way people will stop being defrauded in the financial system is to have good media that protects them.
That they're supposed to be a watchdog, according to the Constitution. This is the Solari Report. This is what we've been talking and fighting over. But it's fabulous. You're fabulous, Catherine Austin. This is just a third quarter wrap. This is just a third quarter wrap up. This isn't even the big year-end wrap, which is going to come out early next year. But anyway, I hope you come back. Thank you for taking the hard questions. I don't mean to yell at you. It's just so criminal. It's so criminal, and I get so upset about the criminality of it all.
Greg,
we're laughing, but
it is bad or worse than you say. The last thing I have to say is I really want to thank you for a lot of great fun and conversations this year. And I probably won't get to talk to you before the holidays. So have a very, very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you for a great year. Thank you not just for me, but for all of my subscribers and clients. We all love USA Watchdog. And I
love you too. But you are bright. And listen, if I was investing in the stock market, I would not do it without somebody like you, or I would just have you do it. Because there is just, it's so
you know what your best investment's going to be?
What's that?
Your business.
Yeah.
You're building a great business. Well,
I appreciate it. If you could just get Google and YouTube and the dark powers to, kind of go along with me,
No,
it'd be
but
great.
you don't need them. You can build on other platforms, Greg, and you have the draw. And what I would do is I would start to build on platforms that have integrity, because you can do it.
Well, thank you for, again, Catherine Austin Fitts, the publisher of the Solari Report at Solari.com. I will be linking to the Solari Report and also your sign-up page. It's just fabulous value for what you get. I mean, you're the real deal. You are an investment advisor extraordinaire. You've handled billions, hundreds of billions of dollars and money, and you are very well connected. And I always just love your brain, and I always learn something when you're on. So thank you, Catherine Austin. I'm serious. That's not a joke.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Catherine Austin Fitts, for being on.
Have a great day, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.